Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome back to the Altibox Norway chess tournament in 2022. So we're following now a new beautiful game from the round 1. It's Viswanathan Anand versus Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and I think Vichy is now big news in the chess community because Vichy played really a beautiful rapid tournament recently in which he destroyed every top grandmaster of these days. He gained also 50 rating points in the rapid sections, which is really wild. So he played also beautiful Blitz tournament now in Norway, in which he also destroyed the world champion Magnus Carlsen. So it was really simply big Vichy time now recently, and it's, I think, a great thing for us that he's back, that he's playing really beautiful chess. So let's see now what happened in the first round in classical time format chess here between Viswanathan Anand and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. So here Vichy opened with the move e4. Maxime response was c5, and probably Maxime wanted to go again into his favorite opening into the knight of Sicilian, but actually after move knight to f3 and d6, here Vichy Anand didn't allow him to go into the knight of Sicilian. He played the so-called Kanal Sokolsky attack, the so-called Moscow variation. And okay, this move bishop to b5 is of course playable for black. Black can play the move bishop to d7. Nothing special is going on, but actually the idea about the Kanal Sokolsky attack is really a beautiful positional idea. Actually what you want to get is the so-called MAROCZY bind structure. So let's see now, let's go back. I really wanted to show a really important strategic concept. So here, for instance, let's go into the MAROCZY bind structure. So the MAROCZY bind structure is the structure c4 e4. So let's play a couple more moves. I've just played till this particular moment. So now we have this MAROCZY bind structure in which you have the pawn on c4, the knight on e4, and you have also this centralized knight on d4. The problem, the only problem I think about this structure is your bad bishop on f1, which is blocked out by its own pawn. So even if you play it on e2, in the near future you will play f3 and still the bishop is blocked out by its own pawn. Even if you play bishop to d3, so it's still blocked out. The only problem that you have in MAROCZY bind structures is the bad bishop on f1. So that's why with this so-called Kanal Sokolsky attack, you will get rid of the bishop, and then you will go into the MAROCZY bind structure c4 d4, and you don't have any more worries with where to go with your light square bishop. That's the beauty about the Kanal Sokolsky attack. So here I've removed bishop to b5, bishop to d7, bishop takes d7, queen to d7, and now you see Vichy is building now the MAROCZY bind structure, but without the light square bishop. That could bother us, as I said, in the continuation of the game. Many times you don't know where to go with the bishop. So it's, I think, really a beautiful positional idea. So here c4, after move c4, knight to f6, knight to c3, protecting the e4 pawn, and here after move knight to c6, we have d4, c takes d4, and now knight to d4. Look at this. We have reached now the MAROCZY bind structure, so we have now the c4 e4 setup. We have also the centralized knight, but we don't have, as I said, the bad bishop on f1. Really good setup here by white. Here I wanted to also point you out, nothing wrong here also for black. Black didn't play any inaccuracies, mistakes, or blunders here. Black still has a good setup. Black has also decent chances with g6, bishop to g7, get use of this diagonal, a6, b5, maybe here some kind of pawn minority attack is also a possibility. Also in some occasions, what could actually work is here e6 d5 pawn breakthrough to break really the MAROCZY bind structure. So it's also quite a dynamic idea for black. So many opportunities also here for both sides. So as I said, nothing wrong here for black. So here in the continuation we have g6 by Maxime. We have f3, bishop to g7, bishop to e3, getting further control of the d4 square. So now it's really this common MAROCZY bind structure. So we have kingside castling, a6. Here Maxime is preparing maybe this b5 pawn breakthrough. We have a knight to b3, we have e6, and now queen to e2. This is a good move here by Vichy. He's trying to get one of these rooks on the d file. Here maybe rook from a to d1 or rook from f to d1. But now after move queen to e7, let's make a decision. Here pause the video and try to see now, should we play with rook from f to d1 or rook from a to d1? You can be the judge of this. Pause the video and try to see now the best rook move. And I'm telling you this because many times I think in top grandmaster level and also in low rated level, we have seen some problems and also some mistakes where to place with your rook. So pause the video and try to see which rook should be placed on the d file. So okay, the best move is of course rook from f to d1, because we want to use this rook on the c file, because the c file could be also open in the near future, so that's why it's much more correct to play rook from f to d1 than rook from a to d1. If you play rook from a to d1, then you have the opportunity maybe to play rook to e8, but it's unclear if this file will be opened. I think the c file will be opened in the near future, so that's why rook from f to d1 is much better. So I always like to do this setups where to place with your rooks, because it's something that bothers, I think, us many times in our own game. So here after move rook from f to d1, you see Maxime is also competing with this rook on the d file, and also here rook from a to c1 was played, and again Maxime also competes with this rook on the c file. So both players have placed the rooks on open and potentially open files, because now something will maybe get cleared with the move d5. So we have here knight to d4 by Vichy, and now comes, I think, the critical moment of the game. Here I think d5 is really necessary, and I think Maxime Vachier-Lagrave has already a good control of the d5 square. For instance, then if your knight to c6 happens, b takes c6, e5 is the only way maybe to spice up the game, but now after move knight to d7, you have to play f4, and okay, maybe this bishop is a little bit blocked out, but still we can break into position with the move f6, and no worries here for black. So even if you tried, even if you try here e takes d5, c takes d5, c takes d5, knight to d5, knight to d5, then e takes d5, so nothing dramatically changed. Actually here black is even better because of this bishop's activity, because of this annoying pass pawn here. So as I said, here white is already in many tactical problems. So d5 would be the only way here to make progress, but unfortunately Maxime Vachier-Lagrave played, I think, the first mistake. He played now the move knight to d7. Whenever you have the opportunity to play d5 in MAROCZY bind structures in a good way, you should break the position like this, because you cannot just play passively chess, you have to play really active. And now from this point on, Vichy supports now the pawn structure here, builds really this common, really pleasant pawn structure, this really nice tower sort of with the light square pawns, and builds really a nice attacking formation. So after move b3, now comes b5, which is quite a risky move. You don't have to, of course, to sacrifice the pawn like this. You can play knight to d4, knight, bishop to d4, bishop to d4, maybe even after rook to d4 to place your knight on c5, and in the near future maybe also to play then the move b5, but you don't have to sacrifice the pawn. Actually, after b5, Vichy accepts the challenge. We have c takes b5, knight to d4, bishop to d4, bishop to d4, rook to d4, and now a takes b5. Okay, here the problem is, of course, you cannot take with the knight because your rook is hanging on the c file, so that's why queen to d2, first play by Vichy, which is good move, because now two pawns are hanging and you cannot really protect both of them. Even if you play rook to c5, maybe to protect this one, then you get b4, and still the b5 pawn is hanging. So after move queen to d2, we have rook to b8, and here Vichy simply grabs the pawn, the weak pawn on d6. And many times when you play this move e6, then you weaken, of course, your d6 pawn. So that's why if you play the move e6, then you have to play really fast this move d5, which Maxime really missed, I think, in this particular moment. Now after move rook to d6, white is much better, although this is not a completely winning endgame, but Vichy is really an experienced player, which is really a brilliant player, so that's why he will I think have fun while playing this game. So here after move b4, we have knight to e2, we have knight to e5, rook to d1, building really a nice battery on the d file, knight to c6, and now we have a beautiful move e5, because if you take, of course, then you lose here simply the rook on d8. So that's why queen to a7 has to be played, king to h1, and now queen to f2. This was really a beautiful maneuver also by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. So he pinned sort of this knight here to the queen, but actually here Vichy plays again a beautiful move, a rook to c1, simply attacks the knight on c6. We have a rook takes d6, and after e takes d6, knight to e5. And this knight is really annoying, because in the near future the rook will come into the game. Here rook to b5, rook to d5. That was now here the beautiful tactical idea by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. And in the continuation of the game, Vichy played again a beautiful calm move h3. He doesn't worry here, because he's saying, okay, I'm up a pawn, I have this beautiful passer, I don't want to rush this attack, still first creating breathing spaces for the king, and then this pawn will roll, this pawn will be the huge strategic element here. So here in the continuation, rook to b5. So now Maxime is threatening this move, rook to d5, getting the queen somewhere, but but again a beautiful counterattack here by Viswanathan Anand f4, and he calculated this position in a beautiful way, because if you play now rook to d5, if you attack the queen, then you get this one. Queen to b2 attacks the knight, and even if you try here maybe some kind of a fork, knight to d3, look at this, rook to c8 is actually checkmate, because the queen is covering the square g7. So this was also really a dirty trap here by Viswanathan. So that's why after move f4 we have knight to d7, blocking the pawn, not allowing this pawn to move to be moved further. We have queen to d4, trying of course to trade off the queens, and again if you don't react you get here checkmated on the back rank. Even if you take, look at this, you get this one, rook to c8, you can you have to cover yourself, that you get this one, rook to c8, rook to f8, pardon me, and then after queen to h8, again a beautiful checkmate. The pawn is protecting this very important e7 square, is not allowing the king to escape. Really amazing stuff. So after move queen to d4, again a brilliant move by Viswanathan. Queen takes d4, knight to d4, rook to d5, but now knight to c6 attacks the pawn on b4, and actually from this point on the game is over, because rook to d6 here Vichy simply takes. We have e5, we have f takes e5, knight to e5, but now after rook to c5, look at this, we have now two connected pass pawns, and this is a completely winning game here for white. So rook to d1, a check, not a problem, f6, and here Vichy pushed the pawn further, rook to b1, rook to c3, protecting the pawn on b2, rook to a1, and after rook to c7, in this position Maxime Vachier-Lagrave resigns. So it's, I think, a fair thing here to resign, because two connected pass pawns are simply too much to handle in one particular moment. Maybe, just maybe, black can sacrifice somehow maybe the knight for these two pawns, but then the game should end with this knight and these two pawns against these three pawns. Again, I think a completely winning game here for Viswanathan. So great game, although I think it shows the strength and also the weaknesses of the MAROCZY bind. d5 should have been played in one particular moment of the game. You have to break the position. I played really many times against the MAROCZY bind. If you have the opportunity, break it with the move d5, liberate yourself, because you see how slowly white is building the attack, is really choking you positionally here. So Vichy knows how to play the MAROCZY bind in a beautiful way, and Maxime missed his chances with this d5 breakthrough. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Vichy is back, as I said. He has now his first win in this tournament. He has now great chances maybe to win the whole thing, who knows. If you want to see more Viswanathan games and more Maxime Vachier-Lagrave's games, Magnus Carlsen, Anish Giri, really the top grandmasters of these days, check out my other commented chess games from the past. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.